This next race, though, we've got the Austrian combination, Jette Ringleb and Wolfgang Siegel. So we can see Yuri Suchak helping with the boat handling. Now, I take it you had the same strategy as everybody else as these guys get started, get to that first turning point quickly, or what was your approach? I mean, you're saying earlier you didn't want to burn out your forearms in this starting straight.
Yeah, so that was kind of the first time it wasn't my strategy. Normally it is just a straight sprint to that first turning buoy. Even so, you still want to get out to a clean start. Navigation right off the beach is really important, and we've seen crews get tangled up with each other, and then it's kind of well, you lose a lot of time, so it can be race over depending on the severity.
Look at this, the wave's starting to come in, though. We didn't see that in any of the previous races, so they are bouncing over them. Good start for this mixed doubles lineup. Absolutely rapid start for that crew out of the front of the field. We'll find out who it is. It's the Irish, De Casca and Byrne. No slowing them down. Composite of Shandon and Killorglin. What a rapid start for them. They've got a length up already. They're up ahead of Société Nautique de la Baie de Saint-Malo. I believe that's Chloé Briard and Kerrion Boulet, currently in second place. We'll confirm that when we get the GPS data, but a brilliant start for the Irish.
Yeah, and Ronan just came out of the quad too, so.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So he's certainly got something in the locker for this race. France 6 and France 1 contesting that second place. That's between the Société Nautique de la Baie de Saint-Malo, Briard and Boulet, alongside the composite of Saint-Noir and Leon Calouet and Noirot and Alfred. Looking here again at the Austrians, Wolfgang Siegel and Jette Ringleb. So how did you keep yourself out of trouble coming up to this first turning point then? Not much you can do. Were you trying to take a wider angle? I mean, I was chatting earlier with Duca Feta about that approach in the quad, but I presume in a solo, so much more rests on your shoulders when it comes to the positioning.
It does, and I think you really have to read the wind and water conditions before the race starts. In my case, I had a bit of a head cross that was pushing all the boats towards the buoy, and I ended up, I guess I started in lane 5, so I was like more on the outside, which I think was to my advantage, and I just kind of stayed wide and let the wind push me towards the buoy. Other people, I think, just get out ahead so that they can steer whatever course they need to, but I didn't want to get boxed in.
They can take whatever line they want. Yeah, that's the tricky thing, isn't it? If you put all your eggs in that basket of getting out in front and you don't get out in front, you're then caught up in this pack that is forming directly behind the Irish. So the Irish have gone, it's a brave approach, and if it pays off like it has done for the Irish, that's great. But at the bottom of the picture here, we see Charles Cousins and Claire Jameson of the Mumbles Amateur Rowing Club sandwiched all around by the other crews. And that's France 6 on the right of the picture there for the composite of Saint-Noir and Leon Calouet. Finland's boat there with Ilona Hiltunen and Ville-Pekka Mäkelä, Finnish coastal rowers. Such a long distance. So they're coming up 1,250 meters into that first turning point. The advantage will go to Ireland's composite of Shandon and Killorglin. But then it's that 1,500 meter segment. How did you keep straight when it came to that, Sarah? Because we've seen the field spread right out and really struggle to get themselves back on to the racing line.
Yeah, that second, or I guess the third turning point for the 6K races, it's quite a ways out, and you actually can't really see it when you come around turning point 2. So I knew it was roughly off the point on shore, so I kind of aimed for a landmark on shore.
Point, do you mean the harbour wall in the background?
Yeah.
Right.
So I just took like a landmark on shore and roughly aimed in that direction.
Because that's bigger and easier to see as a silhouette against the skyline, is that it?
Yeah. But then again, with the wind direction for my race, you could actually surf waves between turning point 2 and 3. So I would say it kind of fishtailed me a little bit, so I had to keep checking my course the whole time.
Right.
Kind of challenging, but
tricky. Because here you can see that the rolling waves are coming in coming against you and on a slight diagonal.
Yeah, the wind direction's definitely changed for this race.
Yeah, interesting. Claire Jameson, Charles Cousins in that red leading boat there. They are behind the Irish, though, who are just off the right-hand side of the screen out in front. So that's Great Britain in second place in the first of those 3 red boats. Handy to have these bright colours, isn't it? Because it's quite tricky to pick out the leaders. But they're coming up to the first turning point, which means that they're going 1,250 metres into this 6K race already. How did you decide your race pace then, Sarah? Because this is one thing I find interesting. For those that don't race the 6K distance very frequently, you might race a 6K distance in a head race back home, and it's a sort of time trial, and you might just have a consistent pace for it. But in something like this, where there's all the turning to deal with, the short, choppy approaches to catch waves, what was your approach to little pushes versus a sort of consistent, steady race pace?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of see the race in terms of segments between turning points, and that's mainly because you lose all your boat speed at a turning point, or you lose a lot of it, so you kind of have to like restart the race and get your boat speed back up. So yeah, I really only focus on like one segment at a time. I don't necessarily change my race strategy from the 4K race to the 6K race. With adrenaline,
you just accept that it's going to last a little bit longer.
It just lasts a little bit longer, and that's the way it is.
Well, most of these boats safely around the corner. It looks as though Ireland are solidifying their lead, and then Great Britain trying to solidify that silver medal position. Luckily, I think most of those boats made it around unscathed around that first turning point. Ireland with a 7-second advantage on Great Britain 2. It's then Brazil, according to my GPS data, in third place. So an impressive push from them to that line. So this is the point where I guess either your big engine can push you to try and overtake people, or your skill when it comes to riding and surfing those waves. And where would you put yourself on that scale of an engine versus skills riding the wave? Because you've been on the coastal scene for quite a while, so I think we consider you quite an experienced coastal athlete.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I consider myself okay at riding waves, but again, I don't think I do it as effectively as some of the Spanish crews or French crews. So I kind of put myself maybe middle of the scale for riding waves, and same with the engine. I mean, I've had a tricky season this year in terms of managing an injury, so my fitness maybe isn't exactly where I want it to be this year, but yeah, normally kind of just like this long straightaway, this would be where you've got to establish your position, and that's gonna set up the rest of the race unless something drastic happens.
Well, it worked well for you in that section there. I'm looking at your splits through the back leg, and you moved up from 12th to 11th, and then even pushed up, and that's where you got into 10th. So in that first K, you were 12th, and then that back leg, you moved up into 11th. So you clearly were better than a lot of the other athletes at holding the course and keeping the boat speed up on that long 1,500-meter leg.
Yeah.
So let's see how they're getting on now as they come up towards the third turning point. It's a long straight, this, isn't it? Irish comfortably out in front. They've both been racing so much, though. Their forearms must be absolutely on fire already.
I would think so.
But look how widely spread out the field is off the racing line, because it can only surely be those boats in the center from top to bottom of the screen here that were really on the racing line. The others looking for safety, I think, on either side.
Yeah, and this is where, like, if you don't have that buoy kind of locked in or a landmark, like, you can easily drift off course and not realize it until you've got another 100 meters to row all of a sudden. So you really do have to keep spotting that buoy as you go across.
Great side-on shots here where we've got Brazil holding on to that bronze medal position. Brazil's Vangelis, Rinca Pereira and Fernanda Ferreira of the Brazil rowing team, just up on France 6, which is the composite crew of Vincent Noirot and Edwige Alfray. And then it's very, very tightly packed for the small places behind them in 5th, 6th and 7th. I think they've earned themselves a pretty safe lead here, so it's theirs to lose, and if they mess up the navigation through the tight corners to come. How did you do that? We had obviously Giucafetta in here a moment ago, and she had a map drawn on her knee to make sure that she knew where she was going.
Yeah,
what was your approach to memorizing the difference between the 4K course that you'd done previously in the weekend versus today?
Yeah, I just took a close look at the map, and when I was walking along the boardwalk towards the beach this morning, I stopped and kind of assessed where the buoys were on the course. But of course, it all looks different on the water, and none of us had the opportunity to practice on the 6K course before the A finals started. So, in my case, I was able to kind of follow the leader around the buoys, and that worked out okay for me.
Helpful, isn't it? Yeah. Look at this. We've got a bit of a push coming in from Spain. The Real Circular de Labradores de Sevilla. Amanda Gil Camacho and Patricio Rojas Aznar. Starting to move up through Edwige Alfrey and Vincent Noirot to try and contest the Brazilians for the bronze medal position. Field looking rather strung out for gold and silver. But the key question is, between those 3 boats trailing, who's going to lock in the bronze? A little bit further to go towards turning point 3. But then you can see this mess of boats behind, really rather spread out. Those on the inside of the course on the left of this picture, they're going to have to work their way out to the turning point. And that's where they're going to lose some distance. You can see that the Irish athletes out in front, always so well trained at navigating. They're cutting a very, very fine line towards that 3rd turning point. We can see so beautifully here. World Rowing Productions giving us the best shots you can imagine for tracking athletes like this over a 6K course. It's a real feat to put on all of this beautiful footage so that we can see exactly what's going on out there. 3K or so out in the distance. But it's Ireland dominating this race from the front, despite having raced a couple of times already. They're pulling further and further away from Charles Cousins and Claire Jameson. Now, when it comes to the twists and turns then coming up, did you have a particular way of taking those turns? How did you practice your turns? Because we see crews doing it so differently from different boat to different boat. Some take a really aggressive line to it. What was your approach?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning myself the best way to take turns. I know, like Aubrey and I in the double, before we came here, we practiced a bunch of different types of turns so that in the moment we could call like what turn we're going to do. And it also depends like how many crews are around you. If you're like boxed in, you need to try and avoid a collision as best you can, because you're going to lose more time if you're like caught up on that. So, for me, if I can, and the turn is gradual enough, like I try and just kind of pull it around on one side without digging in your blade on the other side. You don't want to slow down the boat if you don't have to. Some of the turns are quite sharp, and you do need to dig in your blade in order to get around the turn. So it all just depends on what turning buoy it is and how many boats are around you. And sometimes, if there's a crash in front of you, it is safer to go wide, I find.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, as soon as you get tangled up, that's 15 to 30 seconds gone, evaporated, and you can't make that up. And it's not as if you're catching your breath while you're fighting off the other crew to break away. Well, round turning point 3 then. Ireland looking pretty safe at the front of the field. I think Great Britain looking good for silver, averting any navigational issues. Battle still very much on for bronze. I mean, Brazil still holding a length and a half up on Spain and France, but then hot on their heels, we've got Italy 1. That's the crew from Camaraderie Mondello, Elena Joanna Armelli and Riccardo Peretti. And then France 2 hot on their heels as well. The Club Aviron en Mer de Banneville-Carteret, Pierrick Ledard and Marine Delano. Almost looks like they're rowing towards the rocks on the side of the course there. But I think surely Ireland have the cleanest line here. I mean, you can just see how much they've spread out. France and Brazil going really wide towards the harbour wall. So as you look back, having completed turning point 3, you've got to be looking for turning point 4, but it must be caught up in a whole coastline of busyness.
It is, and that's the one that almost caught me in the race.
Right.
I thought I was aiming for the right turning point, and I think I was aiming for turning point 5, and it's only because everyone else was on track for 4 that I corrected my course. But it's tough being that lead boat, because you look around and you just see like all the buoys at once.
Just so much in front of you. Yeah. Yeah, that's really tricky. But look at this lead from Ireland, up to nearly 70, 80 meters over Great Britain. And I thought they were getting locked together there. Thankfully, it's still pretty safe for them. Charles Cousins, of course, having just won a bronze medal in the men's solo event, now out here racing again. Everybody seems to be doubling up. We missed you, of course, in the mixed double race this morning, but I think it's paid off you having that slightly fresher set of legs in your A final, right?
Yeah, because it would have been back-to-back races for me. I think I would have had about 5 minutes between races to run down the beach and get in the single.
Yeah, that's not enough. And poor old Aubrey's suffering with a few health issues. So it meant that you had a really clean run out and top 10 in the world. That's still that's quite a title. Here we go. This is what we don't want to see. Some entanglements there. Not ideal, but a mess of boats moving up towards turning point 5 next. I think some hands raised, some frustrations, and I'm sure they're exchanging courtesies between each other as they look now to get their boat back up to speed in the small places here in this A final for the mixed doubles. Ireland already nearly at turning point 5 there. See if Brazil have managed to hold on to that bronze medal position. The front of the field really quite spread out. And when you were racing with Aubrey earlier on in the week through the heats, how did you find it alongside your competitors? Did you get to learn a little bit about their approach to things, or is it just a case of head in the boat and you're racing your own race?
I mean, during the race, you know, you don't typically learn about your competitors, but certainly off the water, you know, you get to know your competitors pretty well, and you get to chat about these types of things. So, you know, we're all friends off the water, and it's kind of nice that way.
Yeah, that's great. That's the important thing, isn't it? I mean, it's great to see how many friendships have sort of grown from competing with each other, and then also at the same time helping each other out with the boat handling and that sort of thing.
For sure, and I find coastal rowing is great that way. Like the atmosphere and camaraderie between athletes is great.
So what do you typically do in the off season now? So is this your last regatta, your last event for the year? You said you ran out of annual leave. How do you keep the training up for next season?
Yeah, so in Canada, we typically at our club will row until the end of October, and then our docks come out usually early November before winter hits. So through the winter, it's a lot of erging, weight training, all the way till April.
And then in April, do you have an event that you target, or that's just when you can get back out on the water?
That's just when we can get back out on the water. I'd say the domestic kind of flat water season typically starts beginning of July for us.
Okay, so then you're on the flat water season for part of the summer months. And what coastal events can you enter? Is it mostly the World Championships that you target, or are there other things? Is there anything locally in Canada or around the US that you could target as a sort of America's championship?
Yeah, so coastal rowing is still pretty new in Canada. I would say, you know, Aubrey and I are the two, I guess, that are pursuing it the most in Canada. But there's more that are coming onto the scene, which is good. We typically target, you know, coming to Worlds, and in Canada there's a beach sprint qualifier that we have to attend and win in order to earn our spot. So unfortunately there's not a lot of racing opportunities for coastal rowing in Canada, not yet anyways. So usually, you know, it's just those two events. This year we were lucky enough to go to there was an America's beach sprint event in Costa Rica that Aubrey and I were able to go to. So that gave us a little bit of extra training there. You
need to build the squad, don't you? You had Aaron's, Who did you race with a couple of years ago?
Yeah, in Shenzhen back in 2019, we had a few others, both Darcy and Michaela Arends,
Darcy and Michaela
sisters.
Arends, that's them, yeah.
Yeah, and then Lauren Thomas and Steve Demetrius as well. So both Lauren and Steve are still rowing. They're actually at my rowing club, and they're still dabbling into coastal here and there. But yeah.
You need to haul them back in for Genoa next year, because you need to enter some more mixed doubles. I mean, there'll be you and Aubrey, hopefully, in Genoa contesting this A final. We'll keep our fingers crossed for you, where we've got still dominating at the front, though. What a race. Dukasca and Byrne, absolute domination. It's their race to lose, but they haven't missed this pinch back in for turning point 7, which is the crucial thing that we have seen many other crews get slightly wrong as they bounce their way towards turning point 7, and then they'll make their way back round towards the chicane. So it looks like no real navigational issues at this point. So how did you tackle this corner? Because this is the sharpest of the turns in the 6K course. Did you do a boat stopper on one side to get around?
Yeah, this one I had to do more of like a beach sprint turn where you really dig in on one side and haul it around on the other.
But then afterwards, your boat's pretty much dead in the water, and you've got to pick it back up.
Yeah, you got to do like a racing start again.
Tough stuff. France 01 we're looking at here. Chloe Briard and Kerry-Anne Boulet. They're riding sort of middle of the pack, currently in 9th place. They'll be looking to try and close in and see if they can move up the order. They've dropped back from 8th to 9th through that first half of the race. As we've seen some of the crews move up, particularly Spain 1, where Real Circulo de Labradores de Sevilla has moved up to 4th. They're probably the ones with the strongest chance of getting into the medal zone if they can overhaul Brazil. Coming up round turning point 7 then is 2nd place Great Britain. France 6 are now in that bronze medal place. Noiro and Edwige Alfred. Spain 1 have moved up into 4th. I think that means that Brazil have dropped off the pace around turning point 6. Brazil now back in 5th. So you must be counting down the meters by this point in the race, hey Sarah?
Yeah, for sure. At this point, you know, you're kind of in the home stretch. You just gotta keep your line and not mess up at this point.
And so what was it that you did differently that really didn't burn up your forearm? So was it just the start that you took a little bit easier that meant that you're still okay here? Or is there something you can change in your grip? What can you do to reduce the issue?
Yeah, that's a good question. Something I'm still experimenting with. Like I actually put tape on my oars to make them less slippery. Mind you, I did that in the heat and it was still an issue. And yeah, I think like trying to relax your grip a little bit does help.
Yeah. But then you risk crabs and you risk all of the other issues if you've not got a solid grasp on it.
Getting your oar knocked out of your hand. Yeah.
Tricky stuff. Well, it looks as though Great Britain's coming under a lot of pressure as Vincent Noirot and Edwige Alfred, composite from Senoir Leon Calouir, try to move up on them. This is that great overhead shot of the French on the right, Great Britain on the left, just over a length separating them coming up towards turning point 8. They'll move through the chicane, so Great Britain will have the inside line on that, and they'll move up the 170 meters to turning point 9 before they start that long arc around back to the beach. Impressive stamina and endurance from the French athletes here, considering they're up against two very well-established British athletes who have been on the British rowing endurance program. I think this is perhaps where Edwige Alfred is relying on her depth of experience from coastal rowing. We know that she was... Edwige Alfred took a couple of bronzes back in 2016 and 17 in the solo. She was a silver in 2014. Yet to top the podium in the solo, but she still gives it absolutely everything. We've seen her racing in the double quite a few times as well. Huge amount of experience from that French athlete. Here's them going around turning point 8. Look at these rollers. They are that little bit rollier, aren't they?
Yeah.
So how does that feel in terms of keeping the boat speed up when you're now going into those rolling waves? Is that a concern? I mean, you don't exactly have the opportunity to surf them now.
Yeah, I think It can depend. You know, if your bow gets launched over the waves, it can really disrupt the boat speed when you come crashing down. It can also risk, you know, especially your bow rower coming off their seat, which is another waste of time.
Oh, this is a wide line taken by Great Britain. So that's the chicane from turning points 8 and 9. One more turning point left as they make their way towards turning point 10. I think a slightly more aggressive line taken there by the French. Could see them slip through. They'll be on the inside track for turning point 10. Nobody's going to touch these two, though. Monica de Casca and Ronan Byrne, the composite from Shandon and Kilorglin. A stunning race from them. I mean, they could almost ease off here. Look, it's an ocean of clear water behind them to anybody contesting for their World Championship title. That brave start really paid off. It was interesting chatting to Christine Cavallo yesterday. She said she rode the second half of her race with square blades because her wrists were just broken and she couldn't feather the blades at all. Not surprising, really, based on it's been everybody's consistent issue through the endurance. And I wonder if the coaches need to listen up and get you guys on a wrist strengthening program of some sort. Go and play some squash through the course of the winter, maybe.
Yeah.
Here we go. Edwige Alfray and Vincent Noirot moving up through Charles Cousins and Claire Jameson. Interesting to see they've got slightly longer stroke in the French boat. They're using nearly their whole slide compared to Great Britain, who are just at half slide really there. Charles Cousins barely making it past half slide, opting for perhaps moving the strength in his power curve towards the finish of each stroke. But that is allowing France to move through. So coming into the beach, beautiful scenes here in Barletta for the last of the A finals here in the mixed double sculls for the 2023 World Rowing Coastal Championships. It's almost certain victory for Monica de Casca and Ronan Byrne. A stunning performance from them. Brave start, and they've just continued to pull away, getting that racing line absolutely bang on, really relying on their expertise and skill navigating the varying conditions out there. Every time they change direction, they've got a new set of waves to deal with and a new viewpoint behind them. Nothing really to anchor their direction to. So really tough stuff getting the navigation right. Not so tough for Monica de Casca and Ronan Byrne. They're going to be world champions here in the mixed double sculls. Taking their time climbing out. No need to catch yourself an injury getting out of the boat just to run up and cross the finish line. So Monica de Casca from Kilorglin Rowing Club, Ireland. She'll come in to cross the line for the victory. She's delighted with that performance. What a race that was. And Ronan Byrne, her doubles partner. Now here's the sprint. Edwige Alfray and Vincent Noirot for Senoir and Leon Calouir. They're going to come onto the beach ahead of Great Britain. So I think that's going to mean Charlie Cousins gets 2 bronze medals in the course of one day. Fantastic performance from them. But here comes Vincent Noirot sprinting up the beach to lock in the silver medal for France. And this composite of Senoir and Leon Calouir. Chuffed to bits with that. An amazing last few hundred meters, wasn't it, Sarah? Them moving up through
that
Britain.
was impressive.
Really impressive, because it's not as though there's much space for them to do it in.
No, once you're into those chicanes, it's tough to get past a boat, and with the alternating turns to each direction, you might be on the inside for one of them, but you won't, unless you can get past them, you won't get the inside line for the next turn.
So difficult. I think Great Britain just went a little bit wide on turning point 9. That opened the door for the superior steering of the French to get them through and pinch silver in the end. But this was the start of that A final for the mixed double sculls. Huge amount of excitement on the beach before the last race of the 2023 World Rowing Coastal Championships. Fast start from the Spanish as we usually expect, Diaz Marino, but it was the Irish who just rockets it out into the lead. Monica de Casca, Ronan Byrne from Shandon and Kilorglin out to the first turning point first. Closely followed then by Claire Jameson and Charles Cousins of Mumbles Amateur Rowing Club. They were second for the majority of the race, but the Irish just ran away with it. There they are after turning point 3, continuing to extend their lead. A lot of horse trading for that bronze medal through the second half of the race, and in the end, we started to see the French combination from Senoir and Leon Calouir, Vincent Noirot and Edwige Alfray move up past the Brazilians, move past the Spanish to lock in the bronze, but then it wasn't until the last couple of corners. Here's that turning point where the French moved up through Great Britain to pinch silver. So that's the change of place between silver and bronze, but these are the gold medalists, the world champions in the mixed double sculls for 2023, Monica Dukaska and Ronan Byrne.
Ireland represented by
Irlanda rappresentata da